back to the Jordan Sekulow Show. We are joined by a good friend of the broadcast, Harris Safar, who is the national spokesperson for the Ahmadi Muslim community in the United States. The leader of that community has worldwide has written a letter to President Obama and other world leaders. I want to talk to Harris about that. Harris, as always, thanks for being with us on the show.
Great. It's a pleasure to be on. Thank you so much, Jordan.
Let me ask you right off the top, the leader of the Ahmadi Muslim community has written an unprecedented letter to the president. Will you tell me what is your leader asking for, the spiritual leader and the head of the Ahmadi community across the globe?
Sure. So the international spiritual leader, who we call the Khalifa of the worldwide Ahmadi Muslim community, as part of his continued efforts to bring people towards peace and reconciliation, he's reached out to several world leaders to warn them that the destructive path the world currently is walking on is heading towards a nuclear war. And most recently, he contacted the President of the United States, President Obama, and asked him to utilize his authority as the President of the United States, which many argue is, the leader of the free world, to work towards establishing peace and to prevent what he calls the major and minor powers from erupting into a third world war.
Harris, a lot of the talk about when we come to talk about the nuclear issue, I mean, there's the North Koreas, there's some other world powers, Pakistan, there is, you've got, of course, situated Russia and China and other world powers, but a lot of the talk focuses in on Iran. How much of this is tied to Iran, and how important do you think it is for Muslim leaders like your leader to speak out like this and say, this is a bad situation developing quickly and we need to do something about it?
Well, it absolutely does have a lot to do with what's happening in the Middle East currently with Iran and, the tension between Iran and Israel.
Sure.
That's why before even writing a letter to President Barack Obama, the Khalifa has already written a similar letter to the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, to even to Iran's President Ahmadinejad. The Khalifa His Holiness has already reached out to them with the same warning that they need to end their mutual hostilities in order to avoid this war, because his main point is that this war is not going to be like any other war that we've seen in the past. Because this is a nuclear war, the devastation from this will be felt for generations to come. The weapons available today are so destructive that they could lead to generation after generation of children being born with severe genetic or physical defects. Drinking water, food, vegetation will all be contaminated by radiation. And we can only imagine what types of diseases such contamination will lead to. So it's because of the current state and the hostilities of these countries that harbor nuclear weapons that we see today. It's for this reason that His Holiness felt like it's imperative for him to reach out, not just within his own community, but to the world leaders to wake them up.
We're talking to, again, Harris Safar he's the national spokesperson for the Ahmadi Muslim community in the United States. It's the oldest Muslim organization in the U.S., and I encourage you to go to muslimsforpeace.org. We're talking about a letter written by the spiritual and the head of the Ahmadi Muslim community to President Obama. We've talked to some other world leaders. Who else? You've talked about the Iranian leaders, the Israeli leaders, but was this letter addressed to any other world leaders, or was it specific to President Obama?
This letter was specific to President Obama. Each one of these leaders that His Holiness has reached out to has been an individual, personalized communication. But in addition to Israel's and Iran's leader, His Holiness has also reached out to Pope Benedict and even the Canadian Prime Minister, Stephen Harper. And he's living in the United Kingdom as he does. He's already had a continued conversation with many of the leaders in the United Kingdom, including messages to the Queen, even members of Parliament, etc. It's important to remember, Jordan, that His Holiness is not a political leader, nor does he have any desire to be a political leader or a head of a state. He's a spiritual leader, with a strong connection with God, and he's reaching out to world leaders who control the state of affairs in order to implore them to use their influence to head the world in the right direction. Because right now, when you think about where we're heading, and you always hear, especially in the political discourse, we hear about what to do with Iran, and even the GOP candidates right now, they're often asked, what would you do with Iran? Even when Mr. Romney was on the O'Reilly Factor, he said that he would one of the options is to attack. And to Bill Riley's credit, he said, "Wait a minute. So that's gonna kick off this world war. Why would you do that?" And so I think people even here are waking up to the possibility that if we truly act on what we are threatening to, or if Israel acts on what they're threatening to, or if Iran acts on what they're threatening to do, or North Korea, that what is going to unleash is unlike anything we've seen in the past. I think there's a reason why Albert Einstein said that I don't know what the weapons will be used in the Third World War, but I know the Fourth World War will be used. They use sticks and stones, because that's how devastating the Third World War is going to be.
Let me just ask you, Harris, as we're talking about the situation with contacting the world leaders. Let me ask you about, because when people hear, you've been on the broadcast a lot, but in case people have missed you, the Ahmadi Muslim community worldwide, tell people what that is, how many people that entails in the United States and maybe in the estimate of internationally.
In the United States, we're a humble number. We're about 25,000 in the United States. But we're an international organization. We are in over 200 countries in the world, and what we really are is not only with the numbers that we have that exceed tens of millions of members around the world in 200 countries, but it makes us the single largest Muslim organization in the world, period, and the only one that has one unified worldwide spiritual leader. And our works speak for themselves. We've built 15,000 mosques around the world. We've translated the Quran into 70 languages, more than any other Muslim organization. And so our influence is pretty vast. But what our aim is simple. The founder of our community came to, as we believe, to be the promised Messiah, that reformer that's supposed to come in the latter days. And our mission is to do what he was come to do, which is to unite all mankind under the single banner of peace. And to reinvigorate a religious, rational discourse, and to eliminate, especially the Muslim world, from these fanatical and often fantastical views of religion that are not based off of logic and reason. And so he came to spread the teaching that the violent jihad that we hear of has no place in Islam, that the only jihad that he allowed as a founder of our community over 123 years ago was what he called jihad bin qalam, which is the jihad of the pen, that if you need to defend Islam, take to the pen, and that's the only way we can defend Islam. And that's what we're doing under the guidance of the current Khalifa, is to spread that true original teachings of Islam that have been perverted over the centuries.
All right, folks. Harris Safari is a great friend of ours. It's MuslimsForPeace.org. He writes the Huffington Post, Washington Post as well, and really does. They speak out when we say crying out to hear the voices in the Muslim community. This is the community that does speak out, always speaks out, and I think at this time maybe ahead of the game as well, speaking out of the situation, the dangers of what it would mean to have to go to war with Iran and trying to prevent that and support peace. MuslimsForPeace.org. Harris, as always, it's great to have you on the show, and I'm glad we got you on this week.
It was certainly a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks. That's the Harris Safar. He is the national spokesman for the Ahmadi Muslim community here in the United States of America. MuslimsForPeace.org.